All right. Hello, everyone. So, have you ever been in a situation where you wondered how a decision was made, or who made a decision, what were the reasons for certain decisions? Maybe you mistrusted a decision, or someone else mistrusted your decision. Well, in the next 14 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll look into a way how we can make architecture decisions that are transparent and are built on trust and help build trust in our decisions. So hello, my name is Vladas Diržys, and just a quick introduction. I'm Lithuanian, living in Norway for the last 15 years, and just recently joined Autronica as a lead cloud architect. Professionally, I'm interested in domain-driven design, event-driven architecture, and event sourcing. And on a little bit lighter note, I think I'm reasonably good at Mario Kart. Yeah, so enough about me. So a question to you, all of you. Do you think you have now less than 10 browser tabs open? Okay, I see people nodding, right? And also including your mobile phones? No, right? And if the answer would be still yes, I could see David Beckham opening the door and saying, be honest. Well, I trust you if you would say so, but the point I'm trying to make is that most of us have busy schedules, going from one thing to another, email notification is popping up, or Slack, or whatever your instant messaging program you have. And it is challenging for us to keep up with everything in our brains, because our brains have limited working memory capacity. And so our brains could use a little help. And scientific studies suggest that writing actually leads to better decisions. And this is because writing helps clarify thought process, reduces cognitive biases, enhances memory and reflection. And also, interestingly, it strengthens commitment, because when we write our decisions down, we are more likely to remember them and more likely to follow through with the decisions. So it is applicable not only to architecture decisions. So it's generally a good advice if you have a big decision in your life, it's a good advice to write a decision down. Now, we don't have much time, so we'll jump right into it. We'll explore step by step how we would make an architecture decision and how we would write it down as an ADR, architecture decision record. So to set the scene, imagine we are starting a new project that requires a front-end and requires a front-end framework. So we'll choose a front-end framework together and write it down as an ADR. So first of all, our ADR needs a title, and it should be brief and descriptive, and will be prefixed with a decision ID. And it's going to be generic at first, so choosing front-end framework. After that, we also need a status or some metadata, and the status is going to be drafted first. However, I would like also to point out that we have a superseded by status, and we have a status because ADRs are immutable. So that's not to say if there is a typo in an ADR, you cannot fix a typo, but if a decision changes, we should create a new ADR and change the status of the old ADR to superseded by. And this is because we want to keep the history of all the past decisions. Right, so after that, we will have a context section, and context matters. And to illustrate this, I'd like you to think about, for example, houses. How are houses built around the world? Imagine area or flood-prone area. It would be not uncommon to see a house built there on wooden poles. However, as an opposite extreme example, think about Arctic area. You would be not surprised to see an igloo in there, right? So this is an extreme example. However, the same principle applies also to our decisions. So here in the context, we describe the problems we are facing, the constraints we are under. and any relevant background information. Right, and any forces affecting the decision. So we'll start, we'll write our context together. Here we are mentioning that we are starting a new front-end, or we are starting a new project that requires a front-end framework, mentioning some requirements such as high performance for mobile users and some key considerations such as team's existing skills and familiarity with the framework. And after that, we can go and define our options. And the first option is not going to be a surprise to many of you. Here I'm mentioning some pros and cons. Now, not always the options are as clear as like React for this audience. So we need to think who our audience is, who our readers are, and maybe you would also want in your decisions to have a little bit more description what this option actually means. Right. So after that, we can also define a second option. We need to choose from something. So we are ascribing second option, view, again, some pros and cons. And after we have done that, we can go and make our preliminary decision. So we are using here active language on our brief. And let's say we did a decision now to choose the Vue framework because of reasons. It's simple and has good enough performance. Here we are also acknowledging that it is being less mature, but we are being transparent on that. Also, we are defining the consequences of our decisions. So rarely an important decision has no consequences, and it also usually has negative consequences. And I see teams sometimes overlooking the negative consequences while just mentioning the positive consequences. However, again, so important decisions have also negative consequences usually. And so by defining the negative consequences, we are telling the reader that we thought of those consequences of negative consequences. We were diligent in our thinking, and the positive consequences tells the reader why are we accepting the negative consequences. Right, and now we can change the status to propose and go into our decision-making process, whatever that decision-making process is in your organization. So different organizations have different, and it varies from team to team, the decision-making processes, right? What we are going to do here, we are going to follow a so-called architecture advice process. And in architecture advice process, we are seeking advice from people affected by the decision. So in our case, it will be probably our team affected by this decision, and people with expertise. And these people with expertise can be outside of our teams. Right. So that's what we're going to do now. So first of all, we are going and talking to Liam, our React expert, and Liam mentions us that React's performance is not a big deal. It can be improved, so we should not be too worried about it. Then we are also talking to our front-end engineer, Sarah, and she tells us that onboarding is probably also not a big issue because GitHub Copilot is going to write our code anyway. So if you had a bet with someone, at what point I'm going to mention GenAI, so it's minute 9 of the presentation. Jokes aside. So we also went and talked to our software architect, David, and David tells us, look, our framework should be compatible with design system, existing design system. And that design system was not initially on our radar. We didn't think about it. And talking to our software architect in this case revealed our blind spot. And because we learned about this design system, we went and talked to design systems product owner Julia, and she tells us that design system support or design system supports React and Svelte. Interestingly, we also didn't include Svelte into our options. Right, so having done all that, we could go now and reevaluate our decision. We learned new facts, new things. But what we're going to do instead first is we are going to incorporate the advice that we gathered into our ADR. And we are doing this to show to the advice givers that we are listening to their advice. So first of all, we are going to alter the context, and we're going to say that design system support is required. And after that, we're going to go into our options and say that React is supported by design system. Vue is not supported by design system. And we are also adding the third option, Svelte, in this case, like the pros and cons. Now we are ready to reevaluate our decision or change our decision if we would want to. And that's what we're going to do. And because we learned new facts, we decided to change the decision. Right, and we chose React in this case. So for a good measure, we are rewriting the consequences because the consequences changed in our case. And as one of the last things, we can say that the status is accepted. And we are going to rewrite the title to reflect the actual decision. And we are doing this because we want the readers to be able to look at the list of the decisions and to understand what the decisions actually are without having to go into each decision individually. So we are optimizing for the reader. Right, so we not only saw the structure of an ADR, but also went step by step on how we would make a decision and write an ADR. And when it comes to the structure of an ADR, we saw here two additional elements compared to the lightweight template introduced back in 2011 by Michael Nygaard. And these two additional elements are the options element and the advice. And I'll just like to talk a little bit about the advice. So first of all, I want to be clear that advice, when we are gathering advice, there's a difference between advice and an opinion. And in an advice, we are looking for the why you're thinking A is better than B. In an opinion, someone can just tell, I prefer A. But that's not what we are looking for. So we have to be clear about this. And secondly, when we gather advice, as hopefully I could illustrate with our example just before, we make better informed decisions. And I'd like to repeat that again. We make better informed decisions when we gather advice. And thirdly, so it helps build trust in our decisions, especially if we can show that we listen to the advice. And conversely, if we are actually gathering advice and not listening, so it can have a negative effect. So one has to be careful with that. And fourthly, so advice is one of the elements that is required to decentralize our decision-making process. Now, this topic is much bigger. It's not for a lightning talk, but it's one of the elements that allows you to anyone in your organization to make decisions, or one of the enablers, so to say. Right, and if you'd like to learn more about this, so I definitely recommend you checking out this book by Andrew Hermelaw, Facilitating Software Architecture. He has a lot of great advice, pun not intended, about the architecture advice process in this book. And right, so that is it from me. I don't think we have much time for questions, I'm sure. One question, okay.
Thank you for your talk. I'm wondering if you have any advice on how to organize these files so that they don't get lost in some wiki and forgotten about, but are available to a team and in the forefront of their mind.
So obviously the answer is it depends, and it depends on who your readers are. Yeah, so there are different opinions how this can be done, and developers prefer to do it in GitHub or go close to the repositories, right? However, I think you need to think really who your readers are, and if you plan to have the if you want your decisions to be accessible to other people than developers, like product owners, it can be a good idea to put it somewhere like Confluence or other wikis accessible to it. Whether it's not get lost there, it's not a guarantee. You have to do something about it. As we all know, Confluence can be tricky with that. But yeah, I think for me, I think it's Confluence would be the tool if I would want it to keep the decisions accessible.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Right. So if you'd like to reach out to me, you can find me around, ask any more questions if you have. So connect with me on LinkedIn, and please rate my talk. I'd like to improve it. So yeah, thanks very much for joining me.